Greetings, friends. June 30th, information on the front by the end of the day. The month of June came to an end. It was really very difficult, and it remains so by the end. Let's start with a review of the front, and at the end, I will answer your questions. We will start with Volchansk, where active hostilities continue in several directions. As we have already mentioned, there are battles for a block of multi-story buildings. Today, footage of a strike on the positions of Russian troops in one of the high-rise buildings was published. So this is the first point we have in the western part of this house and another point in the central part. It is reported that Russian troops were present there, several positions in this house, so previously it goes into the red zone. And the red zone returns at the intersection of Sabornaya and Korolenko streets. Active military operations continue in our country. As we can see, the enemy is now increasing pressure, and, accordingly, the same messages are coming. That they are conducting assault operations. Although again, there is an important remark, because, although it was possible as a joke in the telegram in the comments, it is still reported that a number of military experts and so on are reporting. I also saw it. News that Russian troops are withdrawing their forces and retreating, and they leave positions, but I generally show a negative. On the contrary, that the red zone has appeared. Well, in general, I'll say this, it's better to watch everything, as they say. As before, I will say in terms of time, there is a week, since you have such doubts, but I take the information, as you understand. Well, there are visual confirmations, and there is such a moment. If there is positive news, why don't I tell you? Therefore, there is such a thing. Although I noticed myself, I have already started looking for what is really reported, that Russian troops are retreating, but, according to the data that I see visually, and plus there were also drops on our house, which we have a corner near the intersection of Pushkin Street with Sabornaya. Along its entire length it was along Sabornaya Street. In other words, this is all confirmed by drone footage. In other words, Russian troops continue to try to break through, occupy several houses, and make their way to the Volchansk aggregate plant. Therefore, since there are such questions, I have answered you, but I only draw it on the basis of either official information or visual confirmations, as they say. Active hostilities continue. We are moving with you further along the Kupiansk-Limansky section of the front without significant changes. Although we have activity observed again in the Svitovsky direction, and it is reported about the Kupinsky direction on the Svitovsky. These are Kislovka, Kotlyrovka, Ivanovka. There is some activity of Russian troops in this area. We move on with you further. On the Russian side, information was received today from the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation that they occupied the entire settlement disputably. But again a few days ago, they announced the capture of the Razdalovka, but now it is controversial. There is no confirmation of this information. In the case of Belagurovka, which we also considered in terms of time, we considered all these moments on camera from a drone, yes. So, there were several viewing angles. So the Russian side said that they had made their way to the center there, and so on. This did not correspond to reality, and we made out that they dropped one flag from the drone. One flag of the drone came in the form of two people, installed and retreated to their original positions. That is, all this is seen. Even where there is no success, they put up a flag, but here is a split and controversial, very big doubts. It's like you had doubts about where the advance of the defense forces was in the Kremen forest, and we actually saw footage from the Russian side that confirms this. Similarly, I brought you the thorns yesterday. In other words, this is all confirmed by footage from a Russian drone. A controversial split, well, there are no visual confirmations at all. I have seen your comments that there are such statements. Friends, there are a lot of statements. Don't forget Nevelskaya and a number of other settlements that were not taken by them. Therefore, now, naturally, against the background of the whole situation, they will cheer up their strength so much. This is part of the information war. Not everything that is served, it is for ordinary people. Sometimes it's aimed purely at their military, sometimes it's aimed at the public, so the normal picture is. Chezhov Yar, fighting continues for the Canal micro-district and the Orlov tract. Today there was also information that the Russian troops allegedly managed to make a breakthrough in the Toretsk direction. That they allegedly found some kind of pipe with an analogy of Avdiivka and went to the rear through this pipe. But that is, the same story is reported, but they went to the rear and took positions. There are no visual confirmations again. If we speak for Avdiivka, then it was all presented very seriously. Yes, shots were shown, even a whole movie, they shot an epic, as they passed there with a welding machine. In other words, there is a lot of misinformation going on now. It also needs to be understood. The fighting is going on, the fighting is very heavy, the enemy is pressing, and we have said that he is concentrating forces in Gorlovka. But do not think that everything is so bad. Although, unfortunately, the situation here is no better. And we turn to Novo-Alexandrovka. Let's go to Novo-Alexandrovka right away. Under Novo-Alexandrovka itself, Russian troops have advanced and have gained a foothold along the forest belts in the direction of Lozovask, and the next settlement will, as it seems, not Vozdvizenka. Vozdvizenka and Lozodskaya. Why? Because if you look at the latest satellite images from this area, abandoned gardens, vegetation, that is. All of this serves as some advantage when you are conducting assault operations or defense against a F-drone, in which there are a lot of directions now. Any obstacle for a F-drone is always a more desirable place where you want to attack than in an open area. Therefore, they are now predicting a further offensive on Lozovsky, and then from Novo-Alexandrovka, as reported. They can go to Vozdvizenka. But then again, there is also Timofeevka. Time will tell. In any case, the enemy has advanced. And let's go down to the south according to the situation. The situation for yesterday, the situation for today. And already in this context, the Yevgenovka Falcon will be disassembled together. I told you on the daytime broadcast that I have a reliable source who said that Russian troops attacked in the western part of the Samoylev beam, that is, he said that they had advanced. Most likely they were present here. I stressed that the source is reliable. Therefore, most likely so. Unfortunately, it turned out that the situation is even worse in fact, yes, than what I was told. But I was informed in one section that the limb of the beam had passed, what we discussed, yes, but it turned out that they had already closed the ledge along the railway, and, accordingly, this advance from Novo-Alexandrovka to the south, in the direction of the railway, along the forest belt. It again allowed them to close the ledge and change. In total, the Russian troops advanced in a section up to 591 kilometers wide to a depth of 114 kilometers. The current situation is as follows. This is together with Novo-Alexandrovka. Well, a serious plot, very serious. Yes. There are further hostilities already taking into account, as we said, if they occupy this beam, its western part. But they have not occupied it, they will go in a northerly direction, respectively. The ledge in which they rested, where there are large type supports, then they will try to bypass it. And we have a similar situation. Yes, they have bypassed it, and they are looming with a neighboring support. In fact, there are two strong points here, but most likely a ledge is already forming. They will try to close it. And then attacking along the Yevgenovka, in the forest belt, they will turn north and, accordingly, form the beam itself in the western direction, but it will be. Although I won't say that earlier, later it can all happen together now along this forest belt. Naturally, they will try to close it, because they have 3 points firm which they are now attacking. Therefore, the situation remains difficult. According to Yevgenovka itself, there is also further progress, and there is a similar situation under the Falcon. In other words, Pokrovskaya remains extremely difficult for us, and, as we said, they are now using FAP 3000 aerial bombs. And the Pokrov direction, not only in Volchansk and Liptsevsky. The Pokrov direction is one of those where they also use them. Therefore, it is necessary to understand that it is soberly, so to speak, to look at the situation. Trenches, dugouts, yes, against aerial bombs, well, that's not quite it. Unfortunately, the situation remains difficult. And today there was just a comment from Zelensky, about the bombs, that patriots do not shoot down bombs. You need to shoot down planes that throw them. This is what I said, we need more frontline air defense, because the ESPU footage was published. The defeat of Russian frontline air defense systems, SAM complexes. It was possible there for a certain period of time, as I understand it, to knock out 8 units there in a week. That is, they were destroyed somewhere, damage was done somewhere, that is, for repairs as they say. And accordingly, the Russian troops are protecting themselves in this way, because they can afford to produce those systems. They can afford to pull them to the front line. Well, they have plenty. Our situation is a little more complicated, because our cities are not covered yet, in order to say what is needed. You can already cover the front line. This is a very complicated process in fact. Well, again, we need to repeat, yes. If we talk about how these systems work, in this case, it is necessary to shoot down planes, not aerial bombs. Because these aerial bombs will be thrown. Their price is a penny. The reserves of the Russian Federation are very large, that is, they are tens of thousands of units. This is the FAB. 250th, 500, 1.5 trucks. In total, there are more than 15,000, as it was said. They have a huge amount of reserves. Naturally, imagine, even if we take the lowest price for a Patriot rocket, $1 million. Well, imagine, you need 10,000, multiply a million by 10,000, you will get to kill only bombs. Therefore, yes, difficult. It will be difficult. It will be difficult at the front so far precisely because of the bombs and correction modules, of course. Therefore, we continue active military operations in the Pokrovsky direction. Today there was a message from our fighters that there had already been an attempt at the first settlement, that is, attempts are already being made to attack with the support of several armored vehicles. Managed to repel this attack. But, as we see, the enemy has already come close to it, at the expense of abandoned gardens. And simultaneously attacking Samansky northwest or north of the Babaki Beam, along several forest belts. He is already preparing to storm the first Novoselovka. At the same time, pressure is coming from the Falcon, not only in the western direction, but also in the southern one. They will definitely push in order to disperse our forces in the direction, in such a way with as wide coverage as possible. Pokrovskaya is where their bet is on him. Let's move on, friends, because really such a site is negative. Karlovka, the Charles Reservoir. The activity of the enemy is observed in our country from the area of Notylovo, from a dacha village. Attempts were made to advance to the neighboring dacha village, which is adjacent to Karlovka, and shots were published by the AFU fighters, where the positions of Russian troops were attacked just at the dacha village itself. Well, actually, they crossed this river along the E50 highway, and a gray zone was added. It is reported that they retreated, remaining in their original position, to a neighboring dacha village, but they are already making attempts. And this is the answer, by the way. There were reports there about a week and a half ago that there was a breakthrough, Karlovka, and so on. I said it doesn't correspond to reality, it doesn't exist. And there is still a night village before Karlovka. This situation now corresponds to reality. But in any case, they have already pulled up by force, and will definitely try to break through. We also have some positionality under Netelov, and don't forget, Nevelskaya also has some positionality. The enemy is waiting for the moment, I say. Now he is biding his time, because again, the number of air bomb strikes in neighboring areas has decreased slightly. But the Pokrov direction is simple. And Turkish, let's tell the truth, there is also a huge number of air bomb attacks on Toretsky right now. This is that our fighters themselves report that, well, there can be more than 10 of them in an hour, this is a lot. There is such a moment, so they shifted the blow a little, and a number of sections moved into some positionality. In Krasnogorovka, active assault operations continue in the central part and the Solnikny microdistrict. We have a similar situation in Yuzhno-Donetsk and the transition to the Ugledar direction. There are further attempts, although after the latest advances, we observe a certain decrease in activity on the Russian side. But this is typical, as we said, they always need to regain their strength for 2 or 3 days, so to speak. Therefore, there are further attempts, but without significant changes, although they are already pressing on Konstantinovka. This is the situation we have, friends, by the end of the month, by the end of the 30th of June at the front. It remains very complicated.